Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today, something big is happening in the Legends of Runeterra world, because it's something that I don't think we've ever really seen. But, here's the tweet. With worlds around the corner, we're releasing a hotfix targeting some of the most dominant decks disrupting the meta that have persisted through the release of Beyond the Bandlewood. These updates aim to encourage deck diversity and address a high-impact bug fix. So, people, wanted a patch to come out with Beyond the Bandlewood, and people have said, forget these tournaments. If they, want to keep things the same for these tournaments, then forget it. But now we have to thank the tournaments, because the tournaments have come to our rescue, because there are some big changes for some of these cards. And this is the first time I think they've ever done this, where, just, hey, we're hot, normally when you say hotfix, it's like to either fix like a big time glitch, or a card isn't working as it's supposed to do, or, like something is completely broken with the game, like, people are like, just playing infinite games for essentially, right? And so something has to be changed. That's normally what a hotfix consists of. Now this time, my friends, we got real balance patches, and so let's take a look at the cards that have changed. Here they are, in all their glory. All 5 of these cards have been changed, and it is crazy. I'm sure some of you are looking at them now and going, oh my god, this is going to change a lot. And it is going to change a lot. So let's just go from left to right and talk through some of these changes. So we start with Shapestone, which is a 1-mana, and I promise you, this is real. That was the real Legends of Runeterra. I know, it's a crazy thing that they're doing. Shapestone, still a 1-mana burst, give an ally 1/1 in this round. If you summon a landmark this game, give it 2/1 instead. So it goes from +3/+1 to +2/+1. Now, what do I think about this? Well, this, interestingly enough, I know you have like the memes about Merciless Hunter, and Rune Runner has been like, a public enemy #1 for like a long time. This one's the most impactful in my opinion, because Shapestone goes in literally every Shurima deck. Every single Shurima deck plays this card, not every Shurima deck plays these. So this to me is like the biggest change, and the one that I'm actually most surprised about for that reason. And actually makes me a little bit worried, because this has happened to other regions as well, where, it happened to Make It Rain. It happened to Pale Cascade, where the region's power spell gets nerfed, and the region just feels a lot worse as a whole. And I do worry that that might happen to Shurima now, because I think that Shapestone was their power spell. It was a crazy card. And now it's like an average to maybe slightly below average card, which is a big change. So yeah, this one's going to have massive ramifications. I think, would you still play Shapestone? I think in a lot of decks now, you just honestly wouldn't. I honestly think that you might think, well, it's only, it's still +2/+1. That's still fine. And yeah, it's still okay for a 1-mana spell, but it's not crazy. It's not like the +3/+1 was allowing your 1-drops to trade with 5 and 6-drops. Like, that's what made it crazy, right? Like, it could push lethal so many times that now it won't. Absolutely insane change. And this one's going to impact the whole of Shurima. This one brings the power level down of all Shurima by, a pretty significant amount. I still think you'd play it in, like, Akshan decks, because obviously it synergizes pretty well with Akshan, because Akshan gives you the landmark. It's also a cheap spell that targets you. So I still think, it's not like a completely dead card. I still think you would play it in, like, Akshan decks. But other than that, really, like, you might not. So yeah, this one I think is probably the biggest change, and one that I didn't expect. But onto, let's meme a little bit. Merciless Hunter has changed, and you'll have noticed that it has gone from 3 to 2 health instead, which is an interesting change. And that, those different ways you could have changed this. You could have made it a give, you could have made it a 3/3, you could have made it a 4/2, which they did. Let's talk about what being a 4/2 does versus those other options. Well, being a 4/2, in my mind, essentially makes this card like a worse 3-drop, but still keeps it at the same power levels on those later turns. It's still a very good like 5 and 6-drop, a card to play on those turns. But as a 3-drop, it got worse, and here's why. Imagine you're playing against an aggro deck, and, you know, they've got all their little 1-drops out, you know, they've got a bunch of small units on the board, they're flooding the board, they're going wide. You're attacking on turn 3, you play your Merciless Hunter, you give something vulnerable. In the old Merciless Hunter, you'd be able to pretty much pick something off for free. You could take whatever their best one of the small units was, and just kill it for free, and still have a 4-1, you know, sitting there most likely as a free unit. That no longer is the case, right? No more are you doing that. Now all of a sudden, you're trading with that 2-1. That's not good. So as a 3-drop, particularly as like against aggro, this card got a lot worse. Now, it's still a good card. Don't get me wrong. This is still a very good card because it still will trade into a lot of different things. You know, it's still good removal. It still has obviously the same great synergies with cards like Sivir and anything with quick attack. So it's still a very, very strong card. It also, of course, dies to like Mystic Shot now, which is nice. You know, that's kind of our little me. Oh, dies to Mystic Shot must be bad. Well, we've seen that isn't necessarily the truth with LeBlanc. But Merciless Hunter, yeah, got a bit worse. This one was kind of like, you know, probably the lightest touch of all of these, I would say. This is probably the card that is least affected by this. But that's probably because it was maybe the strongest card of all of them to start with. So, yeah, Merciless Hunter, bit of a nerf. Will be worse in certain situations, no doubt. And so that's a good thing. On to Ruin Runner. And this one makes me a bit sad, I think. Because if we talk about like Shurima, they had a power 5 cards in my mind. Obviously, these 3 were a part of it. And then if you had Sivir and Treasure Seeker as well, I think that rounded out the Shurima Power 5. And I think of those 5, Ruin Runner would have been the last one that I touched out of any of them. And so I'm kind of surprised, really, because this one hurts. For those of you who haven't noticed, Ruin Runner has gone from a 6-4 to a 6-3. And that is, you know, a pretty sizable nerf, because now, like, if you're attacking with Ruin Runner, like, you better have some sort of protection. Like, you better have a Young Witch down or something, because this thing is not going to live. You know, it'll still be good against decks that, you know, aren't combat focused, like potentially like Darkness, you know, that might not have the units to be able to deal with it, and like, you know, might have to commit multiple spells to it. It's still going to be good against those kind of decks, but against like what I would say most decks, maybe not so much. You know, maybe this could be a struggle, because 3 health, a lot of 2-drops have 3 attack. So yes, you are going to take some damage, but you know, that was a lot better than where we were before, because not that many 3-drops have 4 attack. You know, it's not the norm for a 3-drop to have 4 attack, right? So it would often mean that you'd have to trade at least a 4-drop into Ruin Runner. And even, you know, there's quite a few 4-drops that don't have 4 attack. So, you know, that was the strength of Ruin Runner. But 3, the gap from 3 to 4 is pretty big in terms of units going. You know, because, as I said, there's plenty of 2-drops that have 3 attack. Almost all decent 3-drops have 3 attack, or more. All 4-drops, you know, if you talk, like, the 4-drops that I'm talking about are things like Shen, you know, that have that 3-5 stat line. You know, there's plenty of decent 4-drops with a 3-5 stat line. So, you know, even they wouldn't be able to trade into Ruin Runner. Now, no issue. And that makes this card feel probably quite a bit worse. This is probably now kind of like I mean, still an okay card. Like, all of these cards, I would say, are still at least okay. I would still say Merciless Hunter is actually really good. But this card is kind of like a bit more of like a meta tech. Like, this will be very good if like a control deck becomes meta. You know, decks that don't have that many units become meta. Ruin Runner will be really good against them, of course, because with the Spell Shield, they'll have to commit multiple cards to getting rid of Ruin Runner, which will feel really good. But, you know, aside from that, it's not going to feel nearly as good. So, a pretty sizable nerf to Ruin Runner as well. And we move on to Flawless Duet. And this, I think, finally is the nail in the coffin for Azir Aurelia. Azir Aurelia already, like, it was good in lower ranks, I think, but I think at higher ranks where people knew how to play against it, it wasn't as dominant. or as frustrating, to be honest. When I saw it, even on day one of me playing decks against, people were trying to climb on day one of the new expansion with Azir. I beat most of Azir decks. I don't think the deck is like crazy good. And this, I think, will be the final nail in the coffin, because Flawless Duet going to 2 mana, which is the thing that, is created by multiple cards. Created by Aurelia. It's also created by the Recall one that I can't think of the name of. It goes to 2 mana. And that is a pretty massive change. Now, we all know that going from, like, any increase in mana for any card is a pretty sizable nerf. That's, probably the biggest nerf they're normally going to do for a card. Like, a card would have to be insane to get, like, +2 mana. So +1 mana is probably, like, the biggest nerf you're going to see. And on small spells, it hits more. Rummage literally went from probably the best card in the game to... Oh, dude, am I really putting Rummage in this deck? Like, you have to have a lot of discard targets for it to work. And decks that I would have just auto-included Rummage in before, I don't even put them in anymore. Because I'm like, 2 mana for this? 2 mana to get rid of 2 cards? Like, you better have a lot of discard targets to make Rummage work these days. So, yeah, going from 1 to 2 mana? Like, 2 mana to just Blade Dance 2? Are you crazy? That's a terrible deal. This is now like a terrible card. Like, you better have like you better have Azir and Emperor's Dice on the board if you're thinking about playing this, because otherwise you're just not getting the value that you need from it. Which is a pretty substantial nerf. You can't really play Aurelia on turn 3 anymore. Because this is, you're not gonna have the mana to play this probably. And if you do, like, it's probably not worth playing this on that turn. This got a lot worse. I'm gonna be real with you. This is a pretty big nerf. I think about, like, would you pay 2 mana for 2 1/1s to attack? No. No. This is like, you can compare this now to like the 2 mana. You get the 3 1/1 ephemerals in Shadow Isles. Imagine that, but like a lot worse, because they have to attack, and then as soon as they attack, they're gone. At least with the ephemeral ones, you can use it defensively, but this, like, and most of the time you do use it defensively, and it's still a bad card, that one. So this is like a truly horrendous card now, and I think that this will be the final nail in that deck. So yeah, good. And finally, Flurry of Fists becomes 4 mana from 3 mana, and I think that this one, was a bit sad. I think that basically what this kind of tells us is they want to keep Young Witch as a 1/2. I think that, this card was fine before Young Witch became really good, essentially. And I think that they probably just missed the fact that, like, you could use this with Young Witch, because, we have seen that they have been pretty careful with double attack. There aren't that many cards with double attack, and, they obviously know it's a pretty frustrating keyword to play against. They printed this card, and I'm sure they had some kind of cool synergies in mind for this card, and it is like a fun little card to play with. But the Young Witch synergy essentially broke it, because of course Young Witch would give something quick attack and an extra attack, and then you could then stack this on top of it and give it double attack, even though it only was given quick attack for that round. Now it got granted double attack, and obviously that was probably something that they just missed. And it seems like, they want Young Witch to be good, which is fair enough, because that makes cards like Lulu good as well. So I can understand why they want to do that. But unfortunately, Flurry of Fists kind of had to pay the price. But it's not a card that I'm really going to miss, if I'm honest. I'm glad that this became 4 mana. It's still a pretty powerful effect, but it's going to feel a lot worse, because just costing 1 more mana just always hurts a card quite a bit. If any card was going to survive, it probably was this card, because this card essentially is, anytime you were playing it for the first thing, like, it felt awful, but the second one, is game winning. So honestly, like this is the kind of card that could survive a mana change, if anything. But I think that ship has probably sailed with the other nerfs as well. Like, that kind of Shurima Ionia list. It's probably, gone, and people were already starting to go to Demacia anyway, of course, for the Sivir sort of lists, so this probably you won't be seeing too much of. Anyway, and that's all of the nerfs. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. They essentially did this because obviously they want the World Championships to be, fresh and exciting and not full of Shurima. I think that's what they realized. Like, oh god, it's just going to be like, everyone's just going to bring like Sivir Akshan and, maybe a Zero Aurelia. And, we've had enough of those. So here are some changes. And I think that's what they did, of course. And I'm very glad for it. Maybe this is what they'll be doing, for like the future. They'll just, not stick to any certain schedule. Maybe that's the answer, right? Maybe this is what they'll end up doing, where they won't stick to it in certain patches. They'll just hotfix cards all the time, and just like whenever they think a card needs to be changed, well, change it, and just do little patches of 2 cards, all the time. 2 to 3 cards, maybe up to 5 in rare circumstances like this one, and just change those, and when just work on like a couple cards at a time, change them. That might be the solution. I think that would be quite a good solution, honestly. And then they wouldn't have to stick to like the rigid, like balance patch like formula. They could just be like quick little change. Just gonna change these cards. That's all that's changing. Little patch. I think that could be quite a good idea. Maybe that is what the direction they're going for. But anyway, really, really pleased with this because I was a bit worried. Like, oh god, we're not gonna get any major changes for like a long time. Yikes. But really, really pleased about this, and I think this will be very exciting for the meta because Shurima, I think, got quite a bit worse due to this Shapestone nerf as a whole. So not good for me wanting to play, a Sundisk deck in the upcoming days, but for everyone else, this will feel decent. So yeah. Enjoy the new game, and the new meta, whatever it is. What's the meta gonna be? Shrug shoulders. I don't know. But probably Poppy is my guess. The meta is probably going to be Poppy, if I had to guess. So yeah, thank you so much all for watching. This was a nice surprise to wake up to, and I will see you. Well, I will be streaming somewhat. My throat is still killing me. Not sure if you can hear it. So I'll be trying my best later on, but thank you so much for watching and have a really nice day.